Hello friends, what if you die thinking you'll spend eternity with your beloved wife, only to discover she already has another husband waiting for her in the afterlife? In the emotional and wildly entertaining 2025 romantic drama Eternity, devoted husband Larry tragically dies and arrives at a strange afterlife junction when his wife Joan, of 65 years, soon joins him. Their joyful reunion turns into total chaos as her charming first husband, who died young decades ago, appears, claiming he never stopped waiting for her. Now, poor Joan must make the ultimate heartbreaking choice: spend forever with the man she shared her entire life with, or the passionate first love she lost too soon. This funny, romantic, and deeply moving film explores love, regret, and what forever really means. Come on friend, let's not waste any more time and start this unforgettable afterlife love triangle right. On their way to a party, elderly couple Larry and Joan argue about nearly everything, so distracted they almost crash into another car. When they arrive at their son's house, Larry gently pulls down Joan's sleeve to hide the bandage on her arm and reminds her that she needs to tell the family about her cancer. Joan asks for one more day. She doesn't want to ruin their grandchild's gender reveal party. The family greets them warmly and jokes about their 65-year marriage. They also mention finding a box of Joan's old photos in the basement, including one from her wedding to her first husband, Luke, who died in the war. While snacking on pretzels, Larry suddenly begins to choke. He collapses, gasping for air. Moments later, he wakes up on a train as pink confetti rains down on him. A child in an oversized suit tells him he wasn't expecting this before walking away. When the train stops, Larry notices many passengers wearing hospital gowns. He follows them into a massive hall called the Junction, where confused people wander around saying strange things. Larry insists he's been kidnapped, but a receptionist calmly tells him to wait for his AC. Hours later, Larry is woken by a woman named Anna, who introduces herself as his afterlife coordinator. She explains that Larry has died. At first, he refuses to believe it until he sees the confetti again and realizes his grandchild is a girl. When Anna shows him his reflection, Larry sees that he's young again. She explains that everyone appears as their happiest self in the afterlife. Larry insists he has to go back to his wife, but Anna slaps him to snap him out of it. She explains this place isn't heaven, it's a temporary stop between life and eternity. Suddenly, an alarm sounds and a man is tackled by security for trying to cross a red door. Anna warns Larry never to do that. She takes him to a temporary room filled with brochures advertising different versions of eternity. He must choose one, but once he does, there's no changing it. The closet is filled with his favorite clothes. When he turns on the TV, every channel is an ad for another eternity. Later, while exploring the Junction, Larry ends up at a bar. A flirtatious woman tries to sell him a naughty eternity, but the bartender, Luke, kicks her out, explaining that advertising isn't allowed there. Luke explains the rules. Once you choose an eternity, it's final. No visits, no switching. Break the rules and you're sent to the void, eternal nothingness. Larry admits that his wife is dying of cancer and that he feels guilty for leaving her. He drinks to cope. The next morning, Anna wakes him up and explains that some souls work in the Junction because they're waiting for loved ones or can't accept death. When Larry asks if Joan will die soon, she says that information isn't available. He decides to wait for her. Anna tells him he can work as a janitor after 7 days, but he'll have to move to the basement. Days pass with no sign of Joan. Larry decides to prepare an eternity that will feel like home for her. That night, he writes her a letter explaining everything. At the same time, Joan dies and wakes up on the same train. The next morning, Anna takes Larry to his eternity. He asks her to give Joan the letter, but she says it's against the rules. As he heads toward the station, he suddenly sees Joan stepping off the train. She doesn't notice him at first, but he rushes back to the Junction and they reunite in an emotional hug. Joan already understands she's dead and scolds him for dying in such a stupid way. Their reunion is interrupted by Ryan, Joan's afterlife coordinator, who takes her to meet her first husband, Luke, who has been waiting for her for 67 years. Their reunion is tender and emotional, but Larry bursts in, determined to take Joan with him. Overwhelmed, Joan has a panic attack and is taken away. Ryan later brings her to her room and tries to guide her through her options. Luke visits her, though she's clearly shaken. He tells her he's loved her every day since they were separated. When he tries to kiss her, she pulls away, needing time to think. Meanwhile, Larry argues with Anna, who admits she once had a relationship with Ryan and thinks Luke is very attractive. Larry insists that he was the one who shared a lifetime with Joan. Anna accuses him of emotional manipulation. Later, Joan spends time with Luke, walking through the Junction. Guards rush past, chasing an SAB, and one of them greets Luke warmly, revealing how often he talks about Joan. Luke confesses his love again, but Joan becomes overwhelmed and runs away. Larry then storms into Joan's room with plans for their eternity. She snaps, saying she needs space, and reveals that her best friend died shortly after Larry, which he admits he never liked. He helps her calm down by having her squat, something she couldn't do when she was old. When Larry nearly chokes again on pretzels, Joan panics and he apologizes. She asks for the night alone. Larry is then forced to move to the basement since his 7 days are up. On the way, he sees a poster for a Dean Martin show, Joan's favorite, and asks Anna to arrange it. The next day, Anna brings in a performer, but it turns out to be an impersonator who flirts with Joan. Luke intervenes and punches him. Chaos erupts and Joan finally explodes, yelling at everyone. She demands a solution. After a long call, Anna and Ryan return with one. Joan will be allowed to visit 2 eternities, one with each husband, before making her final choice. The men argue over who goes first, and a coin toss decides. Luke wins. On their trip, Luke and Joan revisit old memories. They laugh, hold hands, and explore a beautiful mountain world together. Over dinner, Joan talks about her children and grandchildren, making Luke uncomfortable, but he insists he doesn't mind at all. What hurts Luke the most is knowing that he never got the chance to build a life with Joan, even though he's grateful she lived a full and happy one. Joan admits she did wait for him at first, but eventually she had to move on. Luke then takes her to a place called the Archives, which exists in every eternity. There, souls can relive memories from their lives. Together, they watch moments from their past, their first date, their first kiss, their first intimate night, their wedding, and their final goodbye before Luke left for the war. Joan tells him how much she missed him, and they share a kiss. But then the memories continue, showing Larry proposing to Joan. Hurt, Luke storms out, accusing Larry of taking advantage of a grieving woman. Joan tries to explain, but he refuses to listen. Meanwhile, Larry is venting about Luke, claiming he constantly plays the tragic hero by dying in the war. He worries that he can never compete with such a perfect memory. Anna suggests that Larry remind Joan why she fell in love with him in the first place. Unsure how to do that, Larry seeks help from Joan's best friend, Karen. Karen appears older and explains that her happiest years came after her husband died, when she was finally able to live openly and love another woman. After a brief moment of happiness, she had to return to hiding who she was for her children. She admits she didn't like Larry at first, but he grew on her. She tells him she doesn't know exactly why Joan loved him, only that she truly did. Larry then sneaks into Luke's room and finds tally marks on the wall, showing how long Luke has been counting the days since his death. He also finds sketches of Joan. When Luke returns, he accuses Larry of manipulating Joan and insists she would have been happier alone. They get into a pathetic physical fight, and during the struggle, Larry's letter falls out of his pocket. Luke points out that Larry proposed at the same dock that once belonged to Luke and Joan, proving he always knew about him. Meanwhile, Joan grows overwhelmed by the endless eternity booths, so Ryan takes her to a quiet hallway filled with abandoned eternities. She admits she still doesn't know what to choose. Ryan tells Luke seems like the safer option, but reminds her the decision is hers alone. The next day, Larry takes Joan to a beach eternity. It's beautiful but crowded. They talk, nearly kiss, and then a kid interrupts them with a story about his horrifying death. Later, they sit on a boat enjoying the calm ocean. Larry apologizes for not being there when Joan died and says he believes their children would want them together. Joan feels manipulated and gets upset. Larry insists he would have waited for her just like Luke did. When they return, Joan wants to visit the archives with Larry, but he refuses, saying people can get lost in memories. She accuses him of being afraid of what they might find. Sitting on the shore, they reminisce about their first date, and Larry admits he always wanted to make her life better. Back at the Junction, Luke finds Larry's letter and reads it. When Joan and Larry return from their date, they share a kiss. Larry says he doesn't care where they go as long as they're together. At that moment, Luke arrives with the coordinators and reveals that Larry broke into Luke's room. He hands Joan a letter and she realizes Larry only stayed because he saw her. Furious, she calls him selfish. Larry fires back, accusing Luke of being frozen in the past. Luke admits he's had other lovers but says he still waited for Joan. Both men demand she choose, but Joan can't. The coordinators pull them apart. Later, Karen visits Joan and comforts her. They drink, laugh, and Karen reminds her that she's dead. She owes nothing to anyone anymore. Meanwhile, Larry and Luke drink together and unexpectedly bond, even agreeing Joan deserves better than both of them. The next morning, Joan announces her decision. She says she loves them both, but choosing either would only bring guilt, so she chooses neither and walks away in tears. She prepares to spend her eternity with Karen. Later, Larry admits to Luke that he proposed at the dock because Luke was always the ghost he could never escape. Luke admits he envied the life Larry built with Joan. They also realize why they appear the way they do. Luke looks like the man he was when he and Joan dreamed of a future, while Larry looks like the man he was when Joan was pregnant with their second child. Suddenly, Larry understands something and rushes off. At the station, he finds Joan boarding a train and asks her to get off for one last conversation. He points out that her hair is long, something she only wore when she was young, which means she was happiest back then, with Luke. He tells her she should go with him. Joan resists at first but finally accepts it. They share a tearful goodbye. Later, Luke and Joan travel together to their eternity. Larry wanders the Junction, unsure of his future, and discovers that Anna and Ryan are back together. Anna tells Larry she stayed because helping lost souls gives her purpose, and that he reminded her why she loves her job. In the mountain eternity, Luke and Joan build a life together, enjoying dates and friendships. But at night, Joan begins sneaking off to the archives, reliving her memories with Larry. Eventually, Luke notices her unhappiness. When she admits she made a mistake, he explodes in anger. Joan explains that while she loved him, it was a youthful love, free of responsibility. Real love, she says, includes hardship. She also realizes Luke loved the woman she used to be, not who she became. Joan decides to escape, even if it means being punished. Luke ultimately helps her by distracting the archivist. She sneaks through memories, runs from guards, and finally makes it back to the Junction. There, Anna and Ryan help her hide. She asks where Larry went, and when she finds out, she rushes to him. In a quiet bar, Joan finds Larry working as a bartender. She asks him to leave with her even though she's now a fugitive. Without hesitation, Larry agrees. Moments later, they arrive in an eternity that recreates the neighborhood where they spent their life together.